Welcome everyone to the NFL Week 4 props episode. Here to get into NFL Week 4 starting on Thursday night, a NFC East battle between the Cowboys and the Giants. You guys know how we do it here. We'll get into our player props for the Week 4 card, quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end, 4 player props each from myself and my co-host. I'm your host, Munaf Manji. You can find me on the Twitter machine at SportsNerd824. And joining me here to help me break everything down from the player prop side of things for NFL Week 4, got my guy here with me. It's Steve Reeder. Steve, what's going on, my man? How you doing?
Doing great, man. Looking forward to another week of football here.
Yeah, it should be another exciting week. I know we had obviously Week 3 in the books, some intriguing final scores, of course. And also joining us here, you know him as the man himself. It's SleepyJ. Sleepy, what's going on, brother?
Lucky we had a little couple minutes before Steve jumped on here. So it was it's been dad-daughter day today. Daughter has a dance. I was out buying dresses and ironing, and it's just one of those days. So, everything I'm looking forward to before we go ahead and get into the podcast. So I'm ready to roll.
We also had mentioned none of us have shaved this week or today, but that's a long story for me. I know Sleepy is usually always clean shaven, but like he mentioned, he's been busy with his daughter today. And Steve, yeah, my third, fourth podcast with Steve, and Steve's going out a little beard there himself. So we'll be a team beard gang here, gentlemen. Steve, what's going on there? You keeping the beard, or we're gonna shave it?
I got to be honest, man. Ever since I saw your beard, I was jealous, and I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it all the way there. It's gonna take 15 years, just like it took you. But I'm gonna look like you by the end of this podcast. So
it was funny. After I think the second episode, myself and Fez did, he had mentioned offline we were talking, and he said, "Oh, I now have competition on the pregame network for the best hair on the network." He said he was still number one. He ranked me number 2, so I think at least I'm up there in the rankings for hairstyle at the pregame.com network there. Gentlemen, coming off of our best bet winner for Monday Night Football, we had Ja'Marr Chase to go over on his receiving prop. We gave it out, I believe it was 79.5, 80.5, but this number closed, I want to say upwards of 82 to 83.5, but I think our handicap was spot on. Best game of the season by far for Ja'Marr Chase last week. And it was a situation where I think we thought that points were going to be at hand. And again, it was a very advantageous matchup for Ja'Marr Chase. And it turned into an absolute shootout where there were 71 points scored in that game. But nonetheless, Ja'Marr Chase finishes the game 7 targets, 6 receptions, 118 yards in that game, and 2 touchdowns. So an easy rocking chair winner for us there. That brings us to 2-1 on our season long, sorry, not season long, but our player prop best bets on this podcast for Monday Night Football. Before we get into our player props, there was not much happening as far as big picture stuff as we usually discuss on the pod. I think we're all getting tired of talking about the Bengals sucking and losing every single week. So we decided, since there are 2 NFL Monday Night Football games this week, we'll handicap both of those games for you, give you our thoughts, of course, for those 2 games. And then, of course, we'll give you our 4th player prop best bet, looking to make it 3 out of 4 for this upcoming Monday night. So, gentlemen, without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start here with our quarterback props for NFL Week 4. Sleepy, why don't you lead us off, my man?
All right. I'm going to go quarterback prop here with Justin Fields, not passing. I'm going to play him rushing. Over 40.5 rushing yards. The Colts, they might have one of the worst rush defenses in the league. Indy, they saw the Packers quarterback in Malik Willis a few weeks back, and he's a runner just like Fields is. And the Colts end up giving up 41 rushing yards to Willis. The Colts secondary, that's the strength of this team. Steelers running backs, they were all banged up last week. So you got to wonder how much work maybe the Steelers running backs got, and were they kind of having practices where they had Fields doing more passing. And I think if you ask him to drop back more, that's going to lead to more runs. So I think after I add it all up, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna play Justin Fields over 40.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, they're also going to be without Jalen Warren. So, I mean, a little bit thin there at that running back position there as well. But, I mean, it's just something that the theme has been this season about how bad the rush defense has been for this Indianapolis Colts team. We saw the first 2 weeks. Joe Mixon in particular was able to get over his rushing yards Week 2, it was it was Josh Jacobs, like Sleepy mentioned there. But Justin Fields, we know it's one of those quarterbacks in this league, like the Jalen Hurts of the world, that'll utilize their legs, something similar to Kyler Murray that Steve mentioned last week for his quarterback player prop that I believe did get to the window there. So yeah, go and talk you off of this one here for Justin Fields. I'd be with you on this for your quarterback prop here. Steve, take us over to your quarterback prop, man. What do you got?
Let me just help out Sleepy a little bit. There's actually 37.5s on the market here. So Sleepy's going to get a better number right here too. So I do like it. I think it's definitely a good play, but there's a 37.5 at Caesars and MGM. So just helping out on that front. For me, I'm going to play something right now that I'm pretty sure is going to be active by the time Sunday hits. I'm looking Jordan Love, and I'm actually looking to fade him here. And I know there's some reasons why that you'd be excited to see him. Frankly, he's a great quarterback, right? We've seen that and throughout the last year and a half here. But he's coming off an injury. And I know that he's practiced, and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be pointing to the practices the last couple of weeks. But when he was initially injured, we thought that maybe he'd going on IR. And once the injury actually was identified, they said the time frame was literally the earliest he would return was this particular week. So yes, he did practice. But to what extent is he going to be able to maneuver totally in the pocket? When he does get hit, what's that going to look like? So all those kind of things are making me a little bit nervous. But let's take a look at Jordan Love's average from last season. He averaged 244 passing yards. The first half of that year, he and the team struggled. So let's call it what it is. They probably did a little bit better in the second half of the season. But he faced the Vikings twice last season. In week 8, 229 yards. Week 17, 257. So why do I like the under so much? For starters, Jordan Love coming off that injury, supposedly close to playing the last 2 weeks. How much of that was actually gamesmanship, though? Here's Jordan Love playing. We want to make sure that the opponent has to prepare for him and maybe have Malik Willis on the back end of it. That's a possibility. So maybe he wasn't as close as we thought. So this is really the front end of that time that he could have missed. And it's completely possible, if not expected at this point, that Jordan Love is going to be less than 100%. Is he close to? Maybe. But I don't think anybody can just assume that he's 100% coming into this game. If you add in the fact that Brian Flores' defense has been unbelievable to start the year, take a look at this. They held CJ Stroud to 215 passing yards, Daniel Jones to 186. Now, it is true, Brock Purdy killed them, right? He had a great game against them. But I think what is so fascinating is that all these Vikings opponents, when they're done playing him, they're talking about how incredible his defensive scheme is. So I think that's going to be a problem for Love, who doesn't have a lot of practice time, who's coming off of an injury. We have a division rivalry game, which tends to be lower scoring, conservative affairs. So all of these reasons, I like Jordan Love's under. And right now we're looking at 242, the market is.
I will turn this immediately over to our resident Packers fan here, Sleepy, on Jordan Love.
I dig it. I think you're going to see a lot of Josh Jacobs this week. I think that Green Bay's probably going to play this one close to the vest. I think this is going to be a game where the Packers look at this and say, who's going to make the first mistake? Is it going to be Love or is it going to be Darnold? And I think that they would probably put their chips in the middle, thinking that Sam Darnold eventually is going to come crashing down to earth. And they could just rely on Josh Jacobs, and they could probably have Jordan Love go out there and, just manage the game. Green Bay is going to be at home. Just go out there and manage the game. Don't do anything stupid and hope and pray, that the other side has a couple miscues that the Packers can capitalize on. So I dig it. I also like Jacobs over his rushing. I think he's going to have a big week here.
All right, let me get over to my quarterback prop here. I'm going over to that game between the Commanders and the Arizona Cardinals and looking at Kyler Murray over 1.5 passing touchdowns in this game against the Washington Commanders. All the talk has really been about, or at least over this past week, of how great Jaden Daniels has looked in the offense and how they really torched the Cincinnati Bengals. But the defense has been terrible, to say the least, over the first 3 weeks here of the season. Commanders have allowed at least 2 passing touchdowns to all 3 opposing quarterbacks that they faced this season. Josh Allen threw for 2 against them. Daniel Jones even threw for 2 against them. Then last week we saw Joe Burrow throw for 3 touchdowns. And I know they were playing from behind in that game and they were forced to throw the football, but I think the opportunities there are really going to be there for Kyler Murray. When we talk about Kyler Murray and we were talking about Justin Fields, he really does utilize his ability or his running ability to create plays. So we've already saw that, I believe, in that week 2 matchup at home where he's able to improvise and find his guys down the field. It seems like Marvin Harrison has really started to flourish here. I know he was a shell of himself in week 1, but week 2, he really broke out. And I think this is the game that has one of the highest totals, if not the highest total on the board. for the week 4 games here. So asking Kyler Murray to get 2 passing touchdowns here in against a defense that hasn't been able to limit the other opposing quarterbacks, like I mentioned, have thrown for at least 2 passing touchdowns in all 3 games against the Commanders. I think Kyler Murray is definitely in line to do this. This one's around minus 120. You could get this over on DraftKings right now, but I do expect a big game here from Kyler Murray in this game here, Steve.
Yeah, Kyler Murray threw 3 touchdown passes to Harrison in the first quarter a couple of weeks ago. So I think that there is certainly a possibility. Washington's secondary is abysmal. So that's the only way I could look there is on the over.
All right, let's get over to our running back props for week 4 here. Sleepy, you want to lead us off?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Carolina Panthers running back Chuba Hubbard to go ahead and score a touchdown. Yes, at plus 100. You know, I want volume when I'm looking at player props, and there was no other running back in the entire league last week that saw more volume than Chuba Hubbard. The guy ended up with 26 touches, had, I think, 21 rushes, and I think 5 catches. He might have actually had 6 targets. So, you know, maybe you could bump that up a little bit. And he's going up against the Bengals defense, and they showed us last week against Washington that they can't stop a nosebleed right now. You have a new look offense right now for Carolina, and they're motivated. It's not like they're going to go out there and play just, oh, we got to go through 4 quarters and get beat again. They probably have confidence that they could certainly win this game. And when they're using players like Chuba Hubbard, who had a very good week, and guys like Deontay Johnson, and you add Andy Dalton into that mix and things just flow, why go away from what worked last week? So I see a lot of Deontay Johnson and a lot of Chuba Hubbard. If he ends up with that much volume again, I don't see how he doesn't get in the end zone. I think this is a good prop. This should probably be minus money. I think we're getting value just because it's Chuba Hubbard. He's not getting a lot of respect in the market, but he might after this game, especially if he ends up with that same volume. So that'll be my running back prop. Chuba Hubbard to go ahead and score a touchdown. Yes, at even money.
Yeah, I think the part that you mentioned, the handicap about the volume, I think is definitely going to continue to be there for a guy like Hubbard, right? And I did see that Deontay Johnson is dealing with a groin injury, but he did say that he expects to be out there on Sunday. But again, if he does aggravate that during the game, I think you're going to see a heavy dose of Chuba Hubbard in this game here. So I think when it gets down, to the red zone, he's a guy that can also catch the ball out of the backfield for you as well, right? And he's, again, whether it's a rushing touchdown or receiving touchdown, there are 2 different ways where, he could get into the end zone for this Carolina Panthers team, who looked absolutely complete opposite of what we were used to seeing with Bryce Young there. On that, just on the first drive, they scored a touchdown against the Raiders, and after that, it was pretty much history for the Raiders in that game. But it was really led by, like you mentioned, their sleepy Deontay Johnson, but more importantly, Chuba Hubbard for the Carolina Panthers. Steve, take us over to your running back prop, man. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to Bijan Robinson over 69.5 rushing yards here. And there's concern with Bijan being limited in today's practice with a shoulder injury. So I get that, but I don't think this is going to affect his availability or his performance on Sunday. Bijan has been playing well this season behind a much improved Atlanta offense. I mean, take a look at what Kirk Cousins has done, the ability to pass the ball. And Kirk hasn't had a dominant game. It's just the fact that he's able to pass the ball is opening up things for that Atlanta's run game. And I don't expect there to be any difference coming into this week. He's had a brutal mattress. He may have a brutal mattress as well, but he's got a brutal matchup to start the year versus Pittsburgh, versus Philly, versus KC. But one thing is clear. He's the bell cow back. He's averaged 16 carries per game. And now he gets New Orleans. And the numbers against the run may look impressive on the surface. But the first 2 games were complete blowouts, right? They're up by a ton of points. Carolina and Dallas had a throw being down by multiple scores almost from the jump. And frankly, those teams don't really have much of a run game to speak of, although I do like that Carolina prop that Sleepy just gave out. I was just looking at some stuff while he was talking there, so I do endorse that one. This past week, Philadelphia ran roughshod all over them. Barkley amassed 147 yards. That's 8.7 yards per carry in the game. That's insane right now. So, by far his best production on the ground this season against that New Orleans club. Also of note, the books that seem to be completely split on this line, it ranges from 69 to 75. The sharper books are at that 75 number. So for me, I want to attack those books that haven't moved or that are a little bit softer in that respect. In a game that's projected to be close, with injuries to the Saints defense, with it being a division rivalry game, which we talked about earlier about those low-scoring conservative affairs, I expect Bijan to get a lot of action, and I think it's going to be his best game of the season. Give me over 69 rushing yards for Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, last season in a game against the Saints, he had 16 attempts for 91 rushing yards. 5.7 yards per carry. So, I do like this. So I think this game will be a little bit closer than what we've seen for the Saints at least over the first 2 weeks of this season. And again, Bijan, like another guy that I have on my fantasy team. So hopefully he does have a big week here against the New Orleans Saints. All right, I'll get over to my running back prop here for week 4. I'm going to go with Aaron Jones over 21.5 receiving yards in this game. We know their narrative, right? Aaron Jones returning to Lambeau Field to go up against his former team in the Packers. But if we look at this Packer defense this season against the running back position, Jones could be in for a big game here. Collectively, opposing running backs have exceeded this projection of 21.5 receiving yards. And over the last 2 weeks, Jones has been heavily involved in that passing game for the Minnesota Vikings. He's seen 6 targets in each of the last 2 weeks for the Vikings there. He's had 36 receiving yards and 46 receiving yards, respectively, over the last 2 weeks here. So I do think that there is an opportunity here for Aaron Jones, whether it's, again, screen passes in the flat, check down some Sam Darnold. I think there is an opportunity for Aaron Jones. And I think there might be that narrative that, hey, that they want to get him the ball and maybe stick it to his former team. I know they're getting Jordan Addison back this week. That only helps the wide receiving group there. But I do think this could turn out to be another big week here for Aaron Jones, at least catching the ball out of the backfield here. If he gets another 5-6 targets, he's a guy that can convert 3 to 4 catches into big yardage. Asking him to get 22 receiving yards when he's done it in 2 straight weeks, I don't think it's a big task here for Aaron Jones. So I'm going to go Aaron Jones over 21.5 receiving yards here, Sleepy.
Yeah, I hope you lose that one because if he doesn't have a big game, my Packers probably end up winning. So I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to try to make you sound all great, and yeah, I hope you lose, my friend.
Here's my question to you: if he finds the end zone in this game, is he doing the Lambeau leap?
It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me one bit. And to be honest with you, he might not actually get booed for doing it, because a lot of the Packer faithful, we appreciate, all the hard running that guy did for all the years. But I mean, maybe he'll have a good running game. I just hope he does have a good passing game, because that could be bad news for my Green Bay Packers.
All right, let's get into our wide receiving props here for week 4. Sleepy, lead us off. What do you got?
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to target a running back, though, and it's going to be for the receiving yards. Okay. I'm going to go and I'm going to play Rams running back Kyren Williams over 16.5 receiving yards. I was typing this up, and the market was already moving to the over on this one. I think for good reason. If you looked at the box score last week for the Rams, we know they don't have Kupp, we know they don't have Nakul, but if you looked at the box score, there wasn't a whole lot of other production with the Rams wide receivers or tight ends. And it looked like they were limited. Well, we know the one thing about Stafford, he wants to throw the ball. And Chicago, that's a team that's kind of difficult right now to go ahead and run the football with. Well, Kyren Williams is probably going to get the lion's share of the rushing attempts, but I can see him being more of a factor in the passing attack. One, you don't have those options in Kupp and Nakua, so you have to go ahead and throw at least a couple more wrinkles. I think he'll get a couple more catches. I don't mind his catches. It was 2.5, like minus 140, 145, somewhere in that area. I think he'll certainly catch probably 3 or 4 balls in this game. 16.5 just felt kind of low, and the fact that as I was typing it up, the market was moving made me feel pretty good that I'm on the right side. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to play Rams running back Kyren Williams over 16.5 receiving yards.
Yeah, again, with all the injuries that they are dealing with there, early in the week, Sean McVay already came out and said that Cooper Kupp was not going to be playing in this game in week 4 here against the Bears. But I think it's something similar to Aaron Jones and some of these other pass catching running backs in the league, that the opportunities are going to be there for a guy like Kyren Williams. And I think that, again, if this offense is going to go, he's going to have to be a big part of it here for the LA Rams. Steve, do you have any thoughts on Kyren Williams over on his receiving yards for this week?
It makes a lot of sense. I haven't really looked into it too much, to be honest, but with the receivers down, Stafford's going to need to get rid of the ball pretty quickly with the line banged up as well. So what do you do in those kind of situations? You look for the tight ends and you look for that running back out of the backfield. And I believe they've gone to a 12 personnel set with those 2 tight ends quite frequently. So I think they're going to try to target that kind of stuff with the tight ends and the running back out of the backfield for sure.
All right, Steve, take us over to your wide receiver prop if you have one for this week. What you got?
Yeah. I do have one, and we have Josh Downs over 34 receiving yards here. And so much of this is more prognosticating what our expectation was in the preseason. You know, Josh looked like the main target for Anthony Richardson in the passing game, and he went down with an injury before the year got started. He was out in week 1, week 2 he was out, week 3 he comes back in, and you know he caught 3 balls for 22 yards versus Chicago last week, and frankly it was pedestrian at best. And I think that actually provides value. Let's take a look at it. Right, he's healthier. He's getting back into shape. He's developing his timing that he had with Richardson. So I think this is going to be huge for Josh Downs in this spot. And specifically, as far as matchup goes, you know, Indianapolis is at home. Pittsburgh, who is a very good home team, who is a very good team when they are underdog, is not as good on the road, is not as good when they are the favorites on that road. So I think that lends some life to this play alone. But Pittsburgh's also really good against the run. I mean, they're been fantastic this year, and they've been good against the pass too. But you know, when you take a look at who they've actually played, it's not really that impressive. And they played Atlanta week 1, where Kirk Cousins couldn't line up under center, so I think those numbers are inflated from that. They played Denver in week 2, and Bo Nix certainly did not have a good game. I'm not sure he's had a really good passing game so far this year. And then last week they played the Chargers, and halfway through the game, Herbert goes down with an injury. So, and he was hobbled to begin with. So all these numbers of them going against passing offenses are down. And I think that's specifically because of who they played. I think that they stopped the run very well. But I think that they could be had in that secondary. And I think that's kind of my expectation is I think the Colts are going to win the game. I think Josh Downs is going to have a big game. And I think Anthony Richardson is going to find some opportunities down the field in this one. So give me Josh Downs over 34 receiving yards.
Yeah, Anthony Richardson, if you're watching these games for the Colts, he's finding his receivers down the field. And this could be a prop where you could almost get this in one catch, honestly, because they've had multiple big plays throughout the first 3 weeks of the regular season. I think case in point, we saw it in week 1 against the Texans. We saw it last week as well for the Colts there as well. So this could be an opportunity where, again, you probably don't even have to sweat this one, Steve, that it gets done in one catch here for Josh Downs and Anthony Richardson in that Colts offense. I'll go over to my tight end prop before I do get over to my receiver prop. We kind of mesh these two together, the wide receiver and tight end group here. I'm looking at Dalton Kincaid this week for the Buffalo Bills on Sunday Night Football to go up and over his number of 37.5 is a number right now. And I think this is a game where we expect Kincaid to get more involved in the offense despite his target taking a downward dip. I think coming into the season, the focus, at least I thought, was going to be on, you know, Dalton Kincaid being that guy for this Buffalo Bills offense. But if there's a matchup for him to exceed his expectations this week, it's against the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens have been one of the best defenses against the run, which I feel like then Josh Allen's going to have to throw the football. But if you take a look over the first 3 weeks, in particular against the tight end position, the Ravens are allowing the second most receiving yards, receptions, and targets to that tight end position. And the Ravens, they've allowed at least 95 receiving yards in back-to-back weeks. We saw last week with Jake Ferguson coming back. He had a big week. I know Dallas was playing from behind in that game. They're forced to throw the football. But I feel like the Bills may be in that similar situation here again. I think this is a low number here for Dalton Kincaid. I really do like this matchup here. I think that we'll see the Bills attack the middle of the field there for against the Ravens defense in this matchup. So I expect this number one, the targets to increase from week to week going forward for Dalton Kincaid. But I think this number is a little bit low, especially what the Ravens have given up to the tight end position. So Dalton Kincaid over 37.5 receiving yards here, Sleepy.
I like this one. You know, I probably would be against it only because I had Kincaid in week 1 and he wasn't very good to me. But I think one of the things that you have working for you here is that the wide receiver core for Buffalo, it is a little bit inexperienced. And they've been able to go ahead and go out there and run because it's not like Buffalo's been in like these very tight games. I think that this is going to be a tight game.
Yeah.
And when you have that, you want your security blanket. And I actually think Josh Allen's security blanket is Dalton Kincaid. So I wouldn't be shocked if you hit this one early, maybe even by halftime. They got to get him a little bit more involved. And I think once you get him involved and the guys that, you know, are inexperienced, they got that work last week. Now you can kind of get them comfortable into these type of games because it's going to be a kind of knock them down, dragging them out game. So they're going to need the tight end to produce. I could see Josh Allen having a big day here going to Kincaid.
All right, Sleepy, take us over to your last player prop for week 4. What do you got?
All right, tight end prop. I'm gonna guess. I thought maybe one of you guys would have this one, but I wouldn't be shocked if both of you guys absolutely hate this one. I'm gonna go with Travis Kelsey over 4.5 catches.
Blech.
There is some juice attached to this. It was like a minus 140. I saw this one on DraftKings, but there's no secret that Kelsey was a big part of the social media gathering to go ahead and scold him on his performances and over the first 3 games. He was visibly pissed off what I saw today on the podcast with his brother as they were talking about, how ineffective he has been. And he just had this look of, I'll show you. I'm Travis Kelsey. I got Super Bowl rings. I have the best quarterback in the world. I'll go out there. I'll do what I need to do. So, it's I think this is one of those cases where, you look down on Kansas City, you said, they can't do this, they can't do that, and they always seem to do it. Well, this is a great moment for Kelsey to go out there and just say, shut up. There is no Pacheco, so I think that obviously opens up targets. And I think we'll see less Noah Gray, less Justin Watson this week, and those guys probably won't be pissed at all if their target share goes down and Kelsey's goes up. Because if there's a mutual respect, and I'm sure that there is, I'm sure Kelsey enjoys not going out there having to, go out there and catch, 15 passes a game, getting cremated every day. But this is one of those times where I feel like he's probably said, you know what, give those guys some extra touches, let those guys get comfortable, let them, be a part of this team instead of, everything being relied on me. So I'm going to go with Kelsey over. The Chargers defense against the tight end. It's not very good. So I think 4.5 catches is fair. I mean, I honestly, I think it's fair. I was hoping for 3.5, and I felt like I would be getting a steal, but I think this is a big week for Kelsey. I tried him last week in fantasy, and I turned out to be a dud. Not the week that but I got to go back to the well here. I think that after everything I heard, and if you saw the look on his face, he's going to mean business this week. And if he means business, it's trouble. So Travis Kelsey for me, my tight end prop over 4.5 catches. I did find that on DraftKings at minus 140. I'm guessing there's probably better juice, but I didn't really look around too much.
6 straight games against the Chargers where Travis Kelsey has had at least 5 or more receptions against that defense. Of course, being in that same division, very familiar with that team, of course. Steve, any thoughts on Travis Kelsey for this week?
I don't think Travis Kelsey should care what anybody thinks. I mean, the team is 3-0. They've won, I think, every Super Bowl in the last 16 years. And he's dating the most famous, maybe, woman on earth right now. So I think he's doing fine. I don't think he should care about us. And frankly, with the success that the Chiefs have had, I don't know if he should worry about it. It doesn't mean I don't like the play, but I don't know if I buy into, Travis Kelsey's upset, let's get in the ball. But frankly, I do think they're going to be a conservative game plan with here because I don't think they need to really push the ball down the field or do any trick plays because of the fact that the Chargers aren't going to be very good. I think Herbert will be hobbled. So I think that the Chiefs are going to kind of try to slow the game plan down. And in a lot of respects, when that happens, you're going to have those third and, second and the medium, third and short. And who are you going to look for? You're going to look for Travis Kelsey, your security blanket. So I think that there's an opportunity here. I would look over receptions more so than yards.
All right. Steve, take us over to your tight end prop if you have one.
I do. For the first time ever on this podcast, I have a tight end prop. I'm going Kyle Pitts under 36.5 receiving yards. The fact is Kyle Pitts is just not a huge part of the offense right now. So far this season, the entire season, he has 8 receptions for 105 yards. And it's not that he's not getting a ton of targets. He's getting 12 targets. Okay. Like he's getting 4 on average per game. So it's not like there's a whole inefficiency here and there's going to be some regression back to the mean because, he got 8 targets, but only caught 2 of them. That's not the case. He's not a part of the offense right now. And according to defensive EPA, the Saints are better against the pass than they are against the run. So, which is yet another reason why I like Bijan's over, which we talked about earlier. I fully expect Atlanta to keep the ball on the ground and look for London when they need a pass play. And let me just put this out there. Kyle Pitts is a name. He's a name that people know. He's a name that was supposed to be fantastic in the fantasy community. He was drafted number 4 overall by the Atlanta Falcons, which is really super high for a tight end. I don't know if it's the highest ever, but it's got to be pretty close. And I think there's a name brand here. If he was in this situation and he was Steve Reeder, handsome dude, slightly balding, but doesn't have the clout that Kyle Pitts does, would he be at 36.5 or would he be at 26.5? I think that a lot of this number is specifically inflated because the name Kyle Pitts is attached to it. Limited opportunities. I think Kyle Pitts goes under 36.5 receiving yards this week.
Yeah, last week I did like Kyle Pitts just because the Chiefs had not been very good or have not been very good against the tight end position. But he's not getting the looks. He's not getting the production. He's not getting the targets because there's a lot of mouths to feed on that Atlanta Falcons offense, right? When you talk about Bijan Robinson, you talk about Drake London, Darnell Mooney has been a great part of their offense there as well. So it just feels like that Kyle Pitts has kind of fallen down the quote unquote depth chart as far as getting target shares there for this Atlanta Falcons team. But I just don't think that this would be the matchup for him. I think that he definitely does regress back to the mean here. Does Kyle Pitts. All right, I'll give you my last player prop here. I don't think I've given out a Texans player prop just yet, but I'll go with it for this week. And it's just based on what we're looking at for as far as injuries that are going right now for this Texans team. And I'm looking at Stephon Diggs to go over 16.5 receiving yards in this game. Joe Mixon, Tank Dell didn't officially practice on Wednesday. Tank Dell has already been ruled out. It says unlikely to play in week 4 with a rib and wrist injury. Did also see Nico Collins is also dealing with some type of injury there as well. But I think this is going to be an opportunity. And again, backup running back Dameon Pierce also didn't play. So how much do you really trust Cam Akers and how much he's prone to turning over the football with fumbles? So I just feel like this might be a game where we do see a more pass heavy offense for the Texans, whether it's led by Nico Collins, but more importantly, Stephon Diggs. I do believe the Texans play the Buffalo Bills next week, so maybe he just gets prepped a little bit more for this game, trying to give it to his former team next week. But his receptions, it's a little bit telling to me that his receptions are at 5.5 and the yardage at 60.5. So if he does get into the realm of 6 catches, I think that he can definitely exceed this number. Just last week, I know they were from playing from behind just because the Minnesota Vikings came out and just really slapped them in the face. 12 targets last week, 10 receptions for Stephon Diggs. He finished the game with 94 yards. But I do think there's an opportunity for Stephon Diggs to really step up in the absence of some of the guys that possibly will be out. Like I mentioned, they'll be down Tank Dell. I don't think Joe Mixon plays. I don't think Dameon Pierce plays in this game. How much do you really rely on Cam Akers? So I feel like there may be an opportunity here for him to get at least 61 receiving yards in this game against the Jacksonville Jaguars in a division game here early in the season. So I expect the Texans to bounce back. I expect CJ Stroud to bounce back. But more importantly, I believe that Stephon Diggs going to have a big game here for the Texans. So over 60.5 receiving yards for Stephon Diggs here, Sleepy.
Yeah, I don't mind that one at all. I think the fact that the Texans got smacked around a little bit last week and they do have a limited rushing attack, or a rushing attack right now that they probably can't rely on. They have to go ahead and throw the football, and they got to get, they got to get right after what happened last week. That starts with Nico Collins. That starts with Stephon Diggs. So I wouldn't be shocked again if both of those guys have big days and maybe both of them are over their receiving yardage by halftime. I think it's going to be the Stroud, Diggs, and Nico Collins show for the Texans this week.
All right. So
and real quick, if I could jump in there,
go ahead.
I have something to add here with Stephon Diggs. The Jags run a ton of man-to-man defense. And frankly, they brought Stephon Diggs, Houston did, to go against that man defense. So I think that Stephon Diggs should have good opportunities here against a defense that he tends to perform well against. So I think that also helps your handicap there.
100%. That's a great point that you bring up there. Especially the Jags have just, based on their record, they just have not been very good both on offense and defense. We just saw last week what the Buffalo Bills were able to do to them on Monday Night Football. So hopefully it is a big week for Stephon Diggs for the Houston Texans. Okay, so that's 4 player props each, as we usually do here. Before we do get into the Monday Night Football game preview for the doubleheader on week 4 Monday night, a lot of great things happening right now on pregame.com. A lot of hot handicappers. We got obviously NFL in full swing. NBA is right around the corner. College basketball is right around the corner. Obviously, we're in the midst of college football, UFC, soccer across the pond. Sleepy, let our listeners know what could they take advantage of right now on pregame.com.
Yeah, right now at pregame.com, we're running our early bird, and that's just about to run out. And if you guys are looking to save 20% on that, that would include anything for football, anything for baseball that's left. You guys are going to end up with basketball coming up here shortly. So early bird pricing is going to end here for football, and then you guys could also save 20% on anything new that's coming out, which that pricing is extremely cheap to go ahead and start out. So if you guys are looking to go ahead and save 20%, go over to pregame.com, enter code PUNT20, that's PUNT20, punt 20, save 20% off there at pregame.com.
All right, let's get into the Monday night football games. 2 games again this week happening on Monday night. One's a pretty good matchup. One is a little bit of a dud, but we'll start with a dud here. That is going to be the Tennessee Titans. They are in South Beach to take on the Miami Dolphins. May want to, again, keep our eye out for this because I know there's a storm brewing there on the coastal line. So we'll see if this game does in fact proceed. But right now, the Miami Dolphins are a 1-point favorite in this game with a total of 36.5. Not sure yet who is going to get, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, who will be under center for the Miami Dolphins, because we did see Skylar Thompson leave last week with what's classified as a chest injury. They did sign Snoop. Is it Snoop Robinson?
Tyler Huntley, Snoop Huntley.
Yeah. Okay. Huntley. Snoop Huntley is the name.
Yep.
For the Miami Dolphins there. So we'll see who in fact does get the start here. On the other side, Will Levis, we know the story. The turnovers have continued to be an issue for him. Hasn't led the Titans team to a victory just yet. But Dolphins right now laying a point at home here. Sleepy, let me start with you if you have anything on the side or the total for this game.
I absolutely hate this game. I've been a supporter of the Dolphins pretty much all year, and I've probably been on them probably in all 3 games. And obviously they've come up duds, hurt, and they have such a dynamic offense, and it really hasn't shown up yet. The Titans have a pretty good defense. We talked about this Titans defense, I think maybe like in week 1, about how they can go ahead and guard the receiver. So I would expect probably a big game here, probably from Achane. But if they're gonna reintroduce a new quarterback here, I don't know what Miami's going to look like. I would lean to the Titans, and that's only because I've been on Miami and I'm really salty with them. But something in my gut tells me that it doesn't matter who the Dolphins have behind center, that each and every player on that team is going to give out, 110%. And that might be all you need to go ahead and beat this Titans team, especially with the Titans coming in here on the road. So I'm not sure if the quarterback really matters. I think sometimes, for some of these games, we can just go ahead and look past the quarterback position, which is rare for us to do. This might be one of those times where the Dolphins are just pissed off with how the season's going. And if they can get a win here, maybe they could figure out the quarterback situation. I mean, I don't know if it's going to get any better. Who knows if Tua's coming back. But they have to win this game because this team is not a bad football team, but they have to win games. Otherwise, they're going to find themselves just down and out and not making the playoffs, no matter who their quarterback is, if he's healthy or not. So I lean to the Titans, but something just tells me, go ahead and take another shot with the Dolphins here and go ahead and be pissed off again for another week with this team. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't care about the total, 36.5. It's extremely low. So I'm not gonna tangle with that. But right now it's a pass, wait and see. And that's kind of what makes me feel the most comfortable. I'm glad this is a Monday night game because this game's gonna stink probably. But yeah, it's a good spot to hide this game.
Steve, what are your thoughts on the Dolphins and the Titans here?
Yeah, even a terrible football game is a football game, so I'm excited to watch it. Listen, I'm not going to turn that away. So I'll be watching for sure, even if it's going to be ugly. And with Tennessee, they've had a rough start, and so much of it comes down to the quarterback play and limiting turnovers and making poor decisions. And I think they're really going to try to scheme for that and game plan for it. It has to be a conversation throughout the week. Keep the ball on the ground. Conservative plays, throwing it away is something that he hasn't been good in the past. So I think that clock is going to be ticking. I think they're going to try to rely on that defense. And on the opposite side of the ball, you have Miami Dolphins. You don't even know who's going to be quarterback right now. It's going to be Skylar Thompson. I don't think so. With the rib injury, I don't think he's going to make it. And if he doesn't, I think it's going to be Tyler Huntley. And frankly, he's just got on the team. Does he know the playbook? Does he know what's going on? We've kind of seen this before. A running quarterback tends to do better coming to a new team, not knowing the playbook because he's able to improvise. I think you're going to see a lot of man spy here with somebody just spying that quarterback to see what happens, limit that running opportunity. Because I don't think Huntley can really throw the ball down the field particularly well. He was great in that Greg Roman style of offense, but frankly, coming over to the Dolphins, it's completely and utterly different. There's some complications. There's some movement before the ball. So I expect the offenses to struggle in this one. And frankly, Tennessee, I think, wants to limit the turnover. So I think they're going to keep the ball on the ground. I would look for a low-scoring affair. I really don't have any opinion on the props right now, but I would expect a low-scoring affair. And if that's the case, do you tease up Tennessee? Maybe. I don't know. I don't feel overly confident in the game. I just don't expect a lot of points.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm in the camp of what Sleepy said, that I had backed this Titan teams over the first 3 weeks of the season, and they've burned me in all 3 weeks, and I'm not going to make that same mistake again. And again, the quarterback play here for both teams honestly is questionable, like you mentioned, with Snoop Huntley getting the start here for the Dolphins. And Will Levis has just been a guy that, again, the potential is there, but he just makes these dumb decisions that costs his team number one points. And when you don't score points, it costs your team's wins. And we've seen that over the first 3 weeks. And we saw in week 2 where Coach Callahan was absolutely frustrated and asked him what the F he's doing. And we saw more of that in week 3. Maybe not stupid decisions, but maybe holding on to the football too long or throwing those interceptions. So I'll be on the sidelines for this one. It'll definitely be up on the screen, of course, because like Steve mentioned, it is football at the end of the day. And we, crave it at the times where we don't have it in those dog days of the summer. But yeah, maybe you tease up the Titans. I'll really be on the sideline for this one. Second game of the night, gentlemen, it will be a battle of NFC teams. We've got the undefeated Seattle Seahawks, 3-0 as they head to Ford Field to take on the Detroit Lions. Lions sitting at 2-1. They did bounce back in week 3 against the Arizona Cardinals after suffering a loss against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 2. Currently, as it stands right now, the Lions are a 3.5-point home favorite in this game with a total of 46. Steve, let me start with you on this game. Seahawks, Lions, anything on the side or total?
Yeah, I might not be the one to ask about this because I took Detroit -4 at -105. I thought there was some value there, and the market's gone against me. At one point, it was up to 4.5, down to 4, and I'm wrong. Clearly, the market disagrees with me. It'll be interesting to see how the game plays out. And I think some of that move has been concern about the Lions' injuries, to be honest with you. And one that I really focus on is Frank Ragnow, that center. I think he's super important to that offensive line. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler. And Detroit's success on offense is predicated on their ability to run the ball. And I think that really stunts their ability to do so. And if that's the case, can Jared Goff, who hasn't looked all that great this year, really bounce back and, to cover up some of those concerns that we have? And I'm not exactly sure, to be honest with you. I don't feel overly confident about Goff, and with the Ragnow injury, it really hurts. But conversely, Seattle really hasn't played anybody, right? They played Denver week 1. They won by 6 points only. They played, that was at home, by the way, in Bo Nix's first start. They played in New England, and they should have lost the game, ended up winning in overtime. And obviously, they had the blowout last week against Miami when they didn't have a quarterback because Tua was injured. So, it's tough for me to really feel overly confident about the game. I don't love the play anymore because of that Ragnow injury. But frankly, I still lean in that direction, specifically at this number at 3.5. I don't think it gets down to 3. But I think we're right in that corridor of a 3 to 4 point game, 3 to 6 point game. I think that's where it's going to end up here. And I do think that Detroit comes out on top.
Is what you mentioned in this game here. And I do like the Lions side here. It's exactly what you mean. Like Seahawks, you look at the schedule of quarterbacks that they've played through the first 3 weeks. It was Bo Nix's first start as an NFL quarterback on the road in Seattle. That's always a tough task. Week 2 was Jacoby Brissett. I know they had to force overtime and get that victory there. And then week 3, it was Skylar Thompson. And then it was a dose of Tim Boyle in that game for the Miami Dolphins. So obviously this is going to be the best offense and best quarterback thus far that they faced this season. And I think we'll find out about the Seahawks team if they are for real or not in this game against the Detroit Lions. The injuries are the concern here for the Lions, like you mentioned there, Steve, with their starting center, Sam Laporta's ankle injury there as well. And it kind of feels like this Lions offense hasn't been as explosive as we saw what they were doing last season. I mean, just moving the ball down at will against opponents here, I should say last season. So I think it's going to be a big test here for the Seahawks. But I do like the Lions side here. I like them being at home on this game on Monday night. I think they found their groove a little bit on the offensive side last week against the Arizona Cardinals. Again, I'm just not convinced on what the Seattle Seahawks have done, and they could absolutely prove me wrong in this game and say that they are legit, being 3-0, but it's just the fact that they haven't played the greatest competition yet when they've gone up against Bo Nix, Jacoby Brissett, and then a combination of Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle there. So I like the Lions side here, -3.5 here. Sleepy, what do you got for Seahawks Lions?
I think the bettors and the odds makers are exactly in the same spot with this Seattle team because it's tough messing with any Seattle game. When you look at the lines and you look at the teams that they're playing, and then we see the results of the games, it feels like you're always, it's squeaky bum time with this team. So when I see a team like that and I feel like that, each and every week with the team, it's telling me that the power ratings are right with this team. And there's not a whole lot of value probably, playing on or against this team. And I don't think there's a lot of value, going ahead and playing the Lions here at -3.5. What I wanted to do is I wanted to take the Lions on the money line and find another team to go ahead and use them maybe in a parlay. That was the first thought that I have. I don't want to lay 3.5. Seattle, they're a good football team. And, guys like Metcalf and a guy we're going to talk about with our Monday Night Football best bet, our prop bet, he's playing really well. You got Lockett, Geno Smith at times. Kenneth Walker is probably going to be back and feeling a lot better. So it's not like the Seahawks are a bad football team. And it's not like the Lions are playing the greatest football. So I feel like 3.5 is just about right. And I'm going to go ahead and probably just look at the Lions on the money line. That's really the only play I feel safe with. I lean to the over. That's just kind of where I'm at with that. But I feel like the Lions on the money line is the safest pick for me. So that's probably all I'll do with that game.
All right. So those are the two games on Monday Night Football, which leaves us with one order of business. That is going to be our player prop best bet for the Monday Night Football game. We are 2-1 thus far this season, coming off of a winner from last Monday, week 3, with Jamar Chase going over on his receiving yards. So hopefully we can get this to 3-1. And as much as I talked about how I don't like the Seahawks in this game, one player in particular that we do like for this game on the Seahawks side is going to be wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba for the Seattle Seahawks. And when I went back and looked over the last 3 weeks of what wide receivers in particular have done against this Lions team, they've had a lot of success, but it's really been in particular those slot wide receivers against the Lions. Let's go back to week 1. Cooper Kupp, who is the designated slot receiver for this Rams team, he finished that game with 110 yards on 14 receptions on 21 targets. And yes, he was getting that targets because Puka Nacua had left the game with a knee injury. So by default, Cooper Kupp was getting a lot of those targets there. But again, did get over, number one, his receptions, and more importantly, the yardage. Fast forward to week 2, Chris Godwin in the slot had a huge game again against the Lions. 7 receptions on 8 targets, 117 yards in that game for Chris Godwin. And then last week, I did play this. I was going back and forth because Greg Dortch did pop up on the injury report, but I did play the over 28.5. And him and Michael Wilson are both kind of tag teaming that slot wide receiver position. But Michael Wilson last week, 64 receiving yards on 8 receptions, and Greg Dortch, 3 catches on 6 targets, 35 yards. His number last week was 28.5. And I think there's an opportunity where you, like we've mentioned, that they have DK Metcalf, they have Tyler Lockett, but I think this is the opportunity where Jackson Smith-Njigba has a pretty big game here for the Seattle Seahawks receiving attack here. I know he hasn't had the greatest of starts to the week. I know he had a great week 2 against the New England Patriots, 16 targets, 12 receptions, 117 yards. But I feel like this is a very buy low opportunity here for us, especially at that slot wide receiver position, where the Lions have not done very well thus far this season. He has had 5 receptions and 34 yards in a game against the Detroit Lions. I believe this was last season, but I think this could be a big game here for Jackson Smith-Njigba. So player prop best bet here, Jackson Smith-Njigba over 48.5 receiving yards here. Steve, any thoughts on this one here for our player prop best bet?
Yeah, he's a player that I like, and I think that he's got a lot of value coming into this year, and I think he's going to be a more of a focal point of that offense. So I think just in general, not even in relation to the game itself, but just because of what he means to that offense, that is somebody that I would look to target and somebody that I like in fantasy as well.
Sleepy, any thoughts on JSN?
I hope that we cash this one. You know what's interesting? The fact that the Giants are playing and I'm watching Steve and I'm looking at all the negative thoughts going through his head as the Giants have the ball.
Seen the bubbles pop up.
Yeah,
Dude, Malik
Neighbors.
Malik Neighbors, 39 yards. So there's nothing to be upset about right now. It's
No,
first
but
drive. We're taking it.
the negative thoughts were going through your head on third
Oh yeah.
down and 4. You were going,
Yes,
they're gonna screw this up. He's gonna screw this up. So it was just
that's
fun
fair.
looking at Steve as a concerned Giants backer there.
Facts.
I'm surprised, Steve, you didn't get. Oh, right, because it is Thursday night football. If this was a Sunday game, I'm sure he would have given out Malik Neighbors over his longest reception, which is now officially 4 of 4 through the first 4 weeks of the regular season. Because I did play this one over 23.5 for Thursday night football, but again, that doesn't do anybody good here talking about Thursday night football. But hopefully, we will be back next week talking about more winners that we did give out. And more importantly, our player prop best bet improving to hopefully 3-1 on the early season here. That's going to do it here for this edition of the NFL Week 4 Prop Show. Sleepy, anything else we need to mention before we all go our separate ways?
Yeah, make sure you guys stay safe down there, especially if you're in that Florida Panhandle, Southwest Georgia area. We got the pretty nasty hurricane coming in, so hopefully you guys are safe. And if you are, and you guys are going to be able to go watch football this week, make sure you guys get over to pregame.com. Again, use that code PUNT20, PUNT20, save 20% off there, anything at pregame.com.
Yes, sir. Again, echoing everything Sleepy just mentioned there. Steve, any parting words before we let you get to your Giants?
Yeah. Honestly, I think the Giants are going to win this game right now. By the time you listen to this, you're going to be very upset that you weren't on it with me or what. But I feel like the Giants are going to win this game. Right now in the early going, that offensive line is holding up against the Dallas defensive line, which historically has absolutely dominated the Giants. And I think that's greatly improved. And I think that's something that, as bettors, when we watch these kind of things, we can kind of see what is an improvement that people maybe don't believe. And frankly, their offensive line historically has been bad recently. And, I think it's much improved. I think that this is a team that is going to be able to pass the ball, is going to get better when that offensive line gels. So that's something I'm going to target as the weeks progress. And we'll let you know if we find any betting opportunities.
A lot of pumping for a team that's 1-2 this season with Steve there, but hopefully we come back next week where we are talking about them being 2-2, hopefully for Steve's sake there. All right, we'll be back next week. Like I mentioned, appreciate everybody that's been supporting us on this podcast. We've got a lot of tweets, a lot of love, and hopefully we can continue cashing tickets here for you guys all throughout the season. All right, we'll talk to you guys next week. Till then, good luck with your bets, and we'll talk to you guys down the road.